Good evening and welcome to the December meeting of the Salem Keizer Transit Board. This evening's agenda includes a number of administrative items like minute approval and routine business, and then we have one action item tonight which includes approval of construction of the Keizer Transit Center Signalization project, and then we will have numerous reports and close the meeting. And we have two action. Oh, yes, we have two action items. Excuse me. There will also be a resolution to rescind and replace the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee bylaws. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. And Linda, would you take attendance and note that we have a quorum? And if you please stand, we will salute the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will have our general manager give us our safety moment.
Yes, thank you. So for the month of December, our safety theme is ergonomics, and we have been promoting to our employees to have an ergonomic check of their workstations. And since this day is your workstation as board members, we'd be happy to work with you to ensure that your chairs are ergonomically correct for you as best we can do. So if you're interested in that, let me know and we'll get our specialist here to work with you on that. And that concludes my safety moment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any announcements? We do have changes to the agenda.
Yes, we'll be adding a short presentation in the presentation section.
Okay. And I believe, do we need to approve the change, or we just change it?
No,
okay.
Just let you know.
Okay. And with that, we will move into the presentation section.
Thank you. So as you know, last weekend was the Festival of Lights Parade, and Cherriots had a decorated bus in the parade, and so we had some media coverage, and our own staff was photographer was taking pictures and videos, and so we'd like to share those with you tonight. So Stephen Custer, Patricia Feeney, whoever's going to say something.
I don't have a lot to add other than what Alan shared with you. Stephen Custer is our digital media marketing coordinator, and we have the KGW clip first, and then we have a very brief clip of the actual parade.
Another holiday fun events planned, and we want to take you down to Keizer to talk about one of those. So Keizer's gearing up for the holiday lights parade. This is tomorrow evening, kind of a holiday starlight parade, if you will. It's going to be a sight to behold. And I was down there yesterday, got a closer look at Cherriots being decorated for tomorrow's big parade. So Cherriots, by the way, is a public transportation system down in Salem and Keizer. The name is a play on Salem's nickname of Cherry City, which I did not know about. Maintenance Supervisor John Porch has a team. They've been working for days, actually a couple of weeks, to outfit the bus here in thousands of lights. It was so beautiful to see this in person. He says the actual parade is a sight to behold.
It's pretty nice. It's there's all sorts of different decorations and horses and kids and candy, and there's a couple of places like Main Trucking just has incredible bunches of lights, you know, far more than we have. So.
We have a lot.
All right, so this is a big deal. They have a lot of people turning out along the parade routes. Again, it's the Keizer Holiday Lights Parade tomorrow at 7 p.m. It begins along River Road, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
see you in there.
I'd like to express my thanks to the board members and staff and their families who were able to participate in the parade. We had a full bus of adults and kids celebrating the holiday, and also a special thanks to the maintenance folks for putting together the bus. They did a great job, as you can see. You know, in the parade, you never see what the outside of the bus looks like in the parade because you're inside, so it's kind of nice to see the video clip. So.
I think that's made real points for our agency, especially having the channel KGW review. We've reached the point of public comment. Has anyone signed up? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment at this time?
I do.
Oh, okay.
So I would like to draw attention to your packets. Les Rourke has submitted a letter that he requested be included in public comments. Les is been a Cherriots supporter for many years. He doesn't even live in town anymore, but he's on our mailing list, gets all of our information. He just received our holiday calendar, and so there's a letter in there thanking us for that, and thanking Cherriots for the good work that they do for the community. So we just wanted to formally acknowledge that it has been received and is in the packet.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
And
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we'll move on to our first action item, which is approval of the construction contract for the Keizer Transit Center Signalization Project. And I'll call on our General Manager.
Thanks. I'd ask Steve Dickey, our Director of Transportation Development, to present the report.
And I'm going to make sure I have this close since this is the best voice I've had this week, so I'm glad to be able to be here. President Krebs, members of the board, I'm glad to bring to you tonight the contract for the construction of the signalized intersection at our Keizer Transit Center. As you well know, a little over 5 years ago, we constructed the Keizer Transit Center. And in the original concept of the development of that center was to have a signalized intersection at the entrance of the facility. When we received our engineer's estimate for what it was going to cost to build the facility, it was apparent that we were not going to have adequate funding to include all elements of the project, and at that time elected to not include the signalized intersection. As a result, the traffic flow in and out of the Keizer Transit Center is a right-in, right-out only, which forces all of our buses and also anyone using the park and ride lot at that location to have to travel through the Keizer Station commercial development before being able to get back to the main arterials that flow into Keizer and to other parts of the Salem-Keizer area. This adds 3 to 5 minutes of additional travel time to every one of our routes that travels out of the Keizer Transit Center before they can actually get onto routes where they're providing service to a broader part of our community. Once the project actually was complete, the project came in under what we had anticipated was going to cost, and we had revenue available. In the subsequent years, we engaged in a process to work with the city of Keizer to put together a coordinated effort to build this signalized intersection. Keizer's contribution is to provide the local match for the grant funds that we have for constructing this site. So after a period of time, we were able to achieve agreement on that intergovernmental agreement. That was followed then with issuing a contract for design with Kittleson and Associates to design the facility. Because of the traffic impacts and the changes of traffic flow, one of the things the city of Keizer required is not only with the construction of the signalized intersection was also alterations to the adjacent intersection where Shamawa Road, Lock Haven, and Keizer Station Boulevard come together, requiring a second left turn pocket to be constructed and associated alterations to the signals at that location. We completed the design with Kittleson and Associates and their subcontractors, putting together a complete bid package that would allow us to do an invitation to bid procurement process. On October 1st, 2018, we released the bid, invitation to bid for construction. Keizer Transit Center intersection project documents were used. And the bids closed on November 13th, 2018. The bids were received and opened in a public bid opening, and we received 4 qualified bids. And one thing that I didn't have in here is we had gone through the bid process earlier, about 6 to 8 months ago, and we received 1 bid, which was significantly higher than the engineer's estimate, and it was determined that that was a non-competitive submittal, and we chose to go back out. With this, we received 4 qualified bids. Excuse me. The bids were received, open public, 4 bids were received, and the Brown Contracting from Eugene, Oregon was the lowest responsive bidder with a total project bid of $1,578,822. The other 3 qualified bidders were CPM Development, PCR Incorporated, and Mainline Paving Incorporated. We have included in your packet a copy of the contract. Excuse me. And staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Brown Contracting for the construction of Keizer Transit Center signalized intersection project in the not to exceed amount of $1,815,645. That includes a project contingency of $236,823. So that would be the amount of their bid plus a 15% contingency. And I would entertain any questions at this time.
Any questions? Yes, Director Bush.
I had a comment today from one of our Keizer City councilors about the area and how is this going to impact the incoming traffic from the Shamawa, coming over the bridge into town. Is that going to cause any more backup? People wanting to turn into there? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not exactly.
Coming into town from the east side, up over the overpass, and then they want to turn into there.
On Shamawa Road or
Yeah,
on?
Shamawa Road. It's not
Okay.
Lock Haven yet.
This is an intersection at the entrance to the Keizer Transit Center.
Right, that's where the signal is going to be, but the entrance
Right.
to the Keizer, the mall itself.
So, you're talking about on Keizer Station Boulevard? No.
I think what she's saying is, as people are proceeding east on Shamawa and going toward Lock Haven, because
You're actually going west.
turning in, going
That's-
from the east, you said?
Right.
Okay, traveling west and going to turn into the Keizer Station development, would there be traffic backed up because of the other
Well, this
signalization?
this signal will be included into the interconnectivity with all the other signals.
Okay.
And it will be under the oversight and control of the regional traffic control center that controls all the rest of the signals. So it will work in conjunction with all the signals. So even though when we come out to make the call, that will cycle the lights to allow traffic to flow through. So it does
Okay.
not operate as an independent, completely
That
independent.
makes sense.
It will be activated by our buses coming up to that location. but then it will cycle, and the other lights within the sequence will cycle as well.
Okay.
And we have been working extensively with the City of Keizer staff as well as with the City of Salem staff that control the signals throughout all of the Salem Keizer area to ensure that the design and the traffic flow is ensured to continue on as designed, which is part of the reason that we're having to do the road work and the extension of that
That makes sense.
second left turn lane. Yes.
And there, it says in, and I sort of remember this, that the city of Keizer is putting some funds into this as well.
Yes, this is true. They are providing the local match for the grants that we're using to construct this project.
Okay. I had one other question.
Another
May I?
question?
Okay. I just was curious, when you said there were 4 bids, and we have only seen the actual amount for the one that's been chosen. Is it possible to see what the other bids were?
Yes, we can provide that.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Director Rogers?
And I understand correctly, the light will only change if a bus comes up to the intersection.
A bus or any other
any
vehicle that
vehicle.
is, yes.
It
Or
won't
if,
just
or if
automatically.
right, or if a
throughout the day.
pedestrian calls for signal, but it is not something that would just cycle if nothing is needing to cross or enter traffic at that point.
And I think because it's on a dead-end road, there's not a lot of traffic going in
Right.
and out of there other than the buses. So it's not that big.
Or the park and ride.
Okay. Any other questions? Are we ready for a motion?
Can I do the motion?
I move the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Brown Contracting, Inc. for the construction of Keizer Transit Center signalized intersection project in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,815,645.
A second?
Moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. So we'll move on to the next item, which is Resolution 2018-10 to rescind and replace the STF Advisory Committee bylaws.
Thank you. John Hamill, the Vice Chair of the STF Advisory Committee, is here to present the reports.
Good evening, President Krebs and board members. This is a pretty routine item. It had its origins back in September when you appointed 2 new members to our committee to fill unexpired terms. As staff was attempting to comply with the bylaws, they found them to be unclear on this issue and submitted for the committee's approval some alternative language to clarify. And the committee felt it accomplished its goals admirably, and with little discussion passed it with a recommendation to the board to pass it also.
Are there any questions? Then I believe we're ready for a vote. Do we have a motion?
I'll do it. I move that the board adopt Resolution 2018-10 to rescind and replace Resolution 2016-03 with revisions to membership, appointments, and terms in Attachment B to the bylaws titled Bylaws of the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee of Salem Area Mass Transit District.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And Mr. Hamill, thank you very much for serving on the committee and bringing this to our attention.
You are fine. You're welcome. It's been rewarding to me.
And now we're ready for the informational reports, and the first one is the January change update.
We're going to ask Chris French, Senior Planner, to present the report.
Good evening, President Krebs and members of the board. I'm here to give the January 2019 service change briefing. This service change is fairly minor. We are making some adjustments to the Route 2 schedule throughout the day to help with timing throughout the route. moving just some of the time between time points to allow the bus to flow more freely without getting held up or running a little bit late. The Route 7, we currently add time at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, add an additional bus to maintain schedule. We're going to move that forward to 1 p.m. now to help with that bus maintaining its schedule. The Route 17, prior to 2 p.m., we're making some adjustments in that schedule, moving some of the recovery time that we have currently out by Capitol Manor throughout the route to help with on-time performance for that route as well. We've adjusted some of the deadhead times. We were in reviewing buses coming and going from the Keizer Transit Center. On average, the buses need about 1 to 3 minutes more, so we made that adjustment. Our dispatch center was entering in that time for buses arriving late or coming back late from the route. So we've made some adjustments to help alleviate some of those. We made a minor correction to a stop name for the website at Mount Angel and Church at Cleveland. When we put the budget, the 2019 budget, we knew that the 7 could possibly have some trouble, so there was hours that we put in the original budget for the 7 and the 11. We didn't quite use all of the 7s. We didn't want to put more hours out on the road than we needed because we knew it was going to be close, but we weren't quite sure. And so there is an increase in daily revenue hours. There's 0 revenue miles because the route isn't traveling any farther. It's just an additional bus actually making that trip that was making it late. And this has an annualized increase of $15,858.36. And that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions?
I have just a quick one. I don't know if it's related to this topic, but when we connect with the other routes in our region, like for example, going to Lincoln City, and they stop here at our transit mall, right?
Yes, that is correct.
The 60X and the 70X. Is there a way that someone who wants to connect with them can find that schedule on our site, or do they have to go to the Lincoln City, is it Lincoln County system to find that? Is that something we need to talk about another time?
No, I know that we have those schedules in our customer service area, and our customer service support gives that. I'm not 100% sure. I think that there is reference to them on our website, but I would have to check to.
Sure.
Okay, because someone was talking to me about it.
It's Tillamook County Transit District, and we have links to their website on our regional page. And so we don't have their schedules on our website directly, but there are links and you can get directly to it from our regional information.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
that does.
Okay.
I will pass that on. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Director Lincoln.
Yes, you said that the Route 2 schedule was adjusted based on the time point camera review. How does that work?
Because we don't currently have CAT AVL on our buses to maintain schedules, we actually have operators come in and use the cameras on board the buses and log the times that the bus, and we take a sample of about 6 trips throughout the whole entire day on a Tuesday through Thursday, so that we kind of have the times that kind of Mondays and Fridays are kind of out of the ordinary days. Anything can happen on those days, so we try to use middle of the week, and they collect the data for us, and then we analyze that data and to determine run times between time points. So it's a fairly involved process.
So do you just do that on a few of the buses at a time, or ones that you have concerns about?
So we do it by looking, so 2 times a year, we do a on-time check at the transit center downtown using the video cameras downtown.
On all of them, huh?
And look at which ones are having problems
okay.
arriving on time during certain times. And then we
okay.
will look at those specifically from that review to gather more data in order to make changes to the routes that we're not quite, that we have concerns about.
Okay.
When we have the CAT AVL, we'll be able to do that more on a regular basis and have that data available and not have to use the long process of actually watching video and fast forward to the time point and logging that time. But currently that's the tool that we have and has been fairly effective for helping us make minor tweaks to routes throughout our system.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will move on to the next item, which is the performance report for the first quarter.
Ask Jeremy Jorstad, Transit Planner, to please come and present the report.
Good evening, President Krebs, members of the board. Here to present the fiscal year 19 quarter 1 performance report. This report compares data from July through September of 2018 with data from July through September of 2017. First, we'll look at changes by service. For Cherriots Local, we see revenue hours per day down 0.6%, revenue miles per day down 0.02%, and boardings down slightly 2.1%. Next, we'll look at Cherriots Regional. We see a drop in revenue hours per day of 8.2%, a drop of revenue miles per day of 19.5%, and a drop in boardings per day of 4.9%. These decreases and these measures are mostly due to the elimination of the Route 2X Grand Run Express last January. Next, we'll look at the Cherriots Shop and Ride. We see boardings per day up 30%, revenue miles per day up 35.9%, and revenue hours per day up 37%. With this being a demand responsive service, we can see that the increase in boardings correlates with the revenue miles per day and revenue hours per day increases. Next, we'll look at Cherriots Lift. We see a decrease in boardings per day of 1.1%, an increase of miles per day of 16%, and an increase of revenue hours per day of 2.8%. The increase to revenue hours is due to our contractor increasing peak vehicles to help with on-time performance. Next, we'll look a little deeper at boardings on our local service. This is our average daily boardings by month. FY18 is the green line, and we can see that our average daily boardings are keeping pace with fiscal year 18, while surpassing fiscal year 16 and fiscal year 17. Next, we'll look at totals by service. Beginning this quarter, we'll be reporting on year-to-date totals of revenue hours, revenue miles, and boardings across all of our services. These totals will be compared on a year-over-year basis, just as our changes by service are. So first, we'll look at our Cherriots Local service. So these are the numbers behind the percentages that we previously saw. And as you can see here, we see slight decreases for all of these measures. Next up is the Cherriots Regional. Once again, we see decreases, and these again are the result of the discontinuation of the Route 2X last January. Next is the Cherriots Shop and Ride, and this service shows increases in all measures due to the increase in boardings. Lastly, we'll look at Cherriots Lift. And this increase in revenue miles shows the, revenue miles due to the increase in peak vehicles to help with on-time performance. Next, we'll look at changes by route. So we'll start with the local corridor routes. Most of our corridor routes are meeting or nearly meeting our target of 20 boardings per revenue hour. Route 13 has seen a nice increase, and that's due in part to the opening of a social services facility on Silverton Road. Next, we'll look at our neighborhood routes. We see Route 16 ridership has increased over the past year, and this is partly due to the discontinuation of the West Salem connector last January. Next, we'll look at our regional routes. We see that the 1X and the 40X have increased from last year and are exceeding our target of 10 boardings per revenue hour. Lastly, we look at our boardings per revenue hour for demand responsive services. We see that all of our services are showing relatively similar boardings from last year. And that completes my report. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
I do, let me find it.
Director Bush?
On the Cherriots shop and ride, you said that the increase in boardings caused the increase in the other two numbers. So what is causing more people to use it? Any idea? We have more people using it?
I like to think, I can't say for sure. No. I like to think that it's a useful service, but.
'Cause we need to plug that. Yay! That's a good choice.
Yeah.
So,
Is it more of a scheduled service, even though it's a request? I mean, if they request, it comes at a specific, more.
There's two pieces to it. There's a dial-a-ride and a shopper shuttle.
So let me jump in,
Yes,
Jeremy. So
please
the
do.
shopping part of the shop and ride is, that's a scheduled service. We go around and pick up and take to a specific grocery store, depending on the specific day. The individuals have a defined time period to shop, and we load all of our customers back on the buses and drop them off in their respective areas. The dial-a-ride piece works much like our 88 paratransit service, whereby people can call in and get scheduled ride pickup times. And we are seeing an increase because of the need, and we have a lot of interest in the shop and ride service. We certainly wish we could add more routes, but it's constrained because that service is grant funded. So, yeah, there's a lot of interest in it. We promote all of our services, and there are just lots of people trying to get on board, if you will, no pun intended, with the service.
Thank you.
so a follow,
Director Kelly?
go ahead.
Well, why don't you let her follow up and then?
Okay. So which one of those components, the shopping or the dial-a-ride, is the one that's increasing more? Is there one?
I can't answer that off the top of my head, but I could get back to you
Okay.
with that information.
I'll put it in my weekly report tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Director Kelly?
I was just going to say, this could be a service that's going to be increasingly needed because we're increasingly getting more gray hair. As you will notice, I have gotten more gray hair. And so I think it's good that we actually have more people using the service. But at some point, we probably need to figure out ways to do a little bit more as we keep on getting older.
That beats the other alternative.
That certainly does.
Other questions?
I'll tell you privately about our aunt in
Well,
New Mexico.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll go on with the next report, which is the Trip Choice Report.
Thanks. Ask Roxanne Belts, our Trip Choice Program Coordinator, to present the report.
Good evening, President Krebs, members of the board. I'm here to present the first quarter report for the Trip Choice Program. You'll notice there's a bit of a change in the way I'm doing the report, and this is because every year in the past, the program funders, which are Cherriots and ODOT and the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, We worked together to establish a work plan that was based on our strategic plan. And this year, we're working from the statewide transportation options plan. And so working with ODOT, they have established goal areas that they would like us to be working within. And many of our programs and projects fall quite nicely within these goal areas. So the goal areas, as you can see, are awareness and understanding, safety, expanded markets, and then congestion and construction mitigation. So within those goal areas, each quarter now I'll report on what activities we accomplished. So in terms of employer outreach for awareness and understanding, we met with 6 employers within the community and discussed our employee programs, ways we could help them. And the things we discussed are the tools and resources like our employer bus pass program, the ride matching tool, Drive Less Connect. We help them create employee surveys to find out how their employees are getting to work. We provide transit route information, and of course we do outreach events, and we talk to them about commuter incentives, things like pre-tax for transit passes and how they can implement those. Another part of awareness and understanding, of course, is community outreach. And some of the events that we attended or that we participated in were the Open Street Salem. Some of my team were very active in putting that together. On Your Feet Friday, which I've talked about before. Again, our team was active in coordinating that with Gallagher's Fitness. Promoting the Wander Walks map. We now have 3 Wander Walks maps that are in print. And we'll be looking into perhaps building a website where we can put the maps on the website. And then we also, we always do our student poster contest. And speaking of the poster contest, something we created this year to help our teachers. As many of you know, teachers are so busy with their schedules. We don't want to add any burden by having them do the poster contest. So we created what's called a whiteboard explainer video and sent it to all of the teachers on a flash drive and said, just plug this in, it's 90 seconds long, play it for your students, and this will explain the whole contest this year. So if you give me a moment, I will play that for you.
Hi, we're Cherriots Trip Choice. We help people figure out how to get around without a car when they need to get to school, work, shopping, or in town. Every year we have a poster contest for middle and high school students to explore your ideas about active transportation. We want you to dream big about this year's theme, World Car Free Day. Can you imagine what our world would look like if there were no cars on the roads for one day? Would you and all your friends walk to school or ride your bike? Maybe people would ride skateboards to work. Maybe people would take the bus. Maybe bicycles would take over the streets. Maybe carpools turn into scooter pools. So talk with your teacher, get some paper and supplies, and show us what the world would look like if there were no cars. Remember, each poster needs to have the Cherriots logo and the theme World Car Free Day anywhere on the poster. The winning posters will be featured in our annual calendar, on display at the Bush Farm Arts Center, and used on other advertising and promotions throughout the next year. There are lots of prizes, but the best part is the first place winner in middle school and high school each get a brand new bicycle for their winning entry. There are even prizes for the teachers. If you want to see what posters won in past years, go to cherriots.org/poster contest. So talk with your teacher about your ideas, make a colorful and creative poster, and don't forget to turn it in before the deadline.
So that cost us less than $200 to produce. And so with something that's that economical, it's a really good way for us to do some promotion and some marketing about the poster contest. So now I'll move into something that should look familiar to you, the data we have from Drive Less Connect, how many new users we get quarter to quarter. First quarter, because we had the Drive Less Challenge, we always see a nice uptick in the number of people participating. So 185 new folks joined last quarter. And then overall quarter to quarter, the number of people we have in the database. And so that we've peaked at over the 5,000, so we're very happy about that with 5,515. And speaking of the Drive Less Challenge, while it wasn't exactly in the first quarter, a lot of the work we did was in the first quarter. So I want to just report briefly. It did happen October 1st through the 15th. There were a number of local activities. We actually had 7 local outreach events the week before the challenge. So in 1 week, we did 7 outreach events, which was great. We recognized our employee transportation coordinators today that helped us do those outreach events. We recognized them at our lunch today. We did have 200 new registrants and over 400 local participants. And because we had such a high number of local participants, about 13% of the prizes statewide actually went to people in our region. So we were real happy about that. And the next goal, of course, is safety and promoting safety. And as you all know, we do the Be Safe, Be Seen. We pass out blinky lights that we order or that we've gotten from ODOT. We passed out about 700 blinky lights. We do that at outreach events, at our main reception area, as well as giving bags of them to our operators to pass out to riders. And we have people continually asking us, do you have more lights? Do you have more lights? So we always keep some around so we can pass them out. We also passed out bike light sets. So that would be a white light for the front and a red light for the back. We had 275 of those bike light sets that we got from ODOT, again, to pass out. And then, as we always do, we're promoting helmet use. And where do we promote helmet use? But at Open Street Salem. So Misha O'Reilly on our team does a wonderful demo where we get melons from Roth and Safeway in West Salem. And we strap the melon into a bike helmet, and then we drop it from a ladder after we've got a group of kids around, or groups of kids and adults. And we ask the kids, what do you think will happen? And, all of them say, well, it's going to break. And so then we show them, we've dropped it in a helmet, we take the melon out of the helmet, and it has little or no damage to demonstrate the value of wearing the helmet. And then she'll take the melon and say, what happens if I drop the melon without the helmet? And little guys like this get very excited at the idea of melons going splat. And sure enough, it did. And he was very happy. And so then she showed him, though. She said, this is what the melon looks like split. And she said, so we want you to wear your helmet so, your head doesn't go like this. So he was just adorable. Other things that we do, of course, in our expanded markets, we've been doing quite a bit of work with Salem for Refugees. And that's an organization that exists to bring together people and resources to empower refugees to thrive here in Salem. So those are churches, government organizations, assistance organizations, all kinds of folks, and we're included in that, where we work with the refugees on their transportation options, help them figure out how to get from home to work, etc. We've also expanded our reach to include more of the rural communities. We had a representative from the City of Independence today who's their outreach coordinator. He's doing a lot of bike ped work, and he is interested in looking into bike share in Independence. And so now he's going to be joining us at our ETC lunches. So it's nice to have people from some of the more rural areas coming in that we can work with. And then lastly, ODOT has asked us to work with them on some congestion and construction mitigation. And there are 2 projects that are on the horizon. One is there'll be work on the I-5 corridor between Salem and Woodburn happening sometime in 2019. And so that's going to cause some significant congestion, as well as the potential for ODOT building on some of their parking lots or doing some building remediation downtown. So with ODOT, they sent out a survey to everyone in the downtown area to find out how they're getting to work now, what opportunities we may have to improve their commute, knowing that if there's going to be construction or there's going to be no place to park, we need to find ways to help folks get around. So we've been doing some outreach with some new messaging with DAS and ODOT, helping them craft some good messages to send out when we're ready, when we know that they're doing the construction, as well as being able to talk with employers about can they work with their employees so that they can either compress their time so that they're not commuting during the peak times in the morning and in the afternoon, or can they consider doing some telework? And even the state agencies will be looking at telework as well, knowing that that I-5 corridor construction is going to cause congestion. And my understanding is it's a number of months. It's not a 1 or a 2 week project, that it'll be quite a long time. So we're always looking at our the use of Drive Less Connect and how we can encourage people to get involved in that. And so hopefully we'll be able to be using that when we talk about the construction mitigation. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Director Lincoln?
Of course, I always have questions and comments. Yeah, that I-5 project is going to be a mess between Woodburn and Salem, repaving both lanes. So that's great that they're looking ahead. You're looking ahead right now to see how you can ease the congestion. The more people you can get in a car, the fewer cars are going to be on that stretch.
Absolutely. Carpool, vanpool, transit, you bet.
Right. And then I also wanted to ask about the Safe Routes to School Steering Committee, looking for funding for perhaps a full-time person in the area. Is that, you're doing that in conjunction with COG?
Yes.
Would COG be the
I'm
person?
on that committee, yes.
Okay, so she'd probably work, she or he would work for COG.
I'm sorry?
The person you hire would be a COG employee, probably?
Yes, that's the Council of Governments has gotten approval from their, I think it's their director. I'm not sure of his title, but anyway, they do have approval to put that person onto their staff. The steering committee has been looking at what would a job description look like for that individual, what would the expectations be, what would the goals be, and we've been working with Safe Routes to School programs all over the state to find out what they've done, how they've done it, how they've paid for it.
Yeah.
So we'll be putting together, I think, a grant proposal for some of the money that will be coming available next year for that.
Great. And then the last question is the outreach to some of the larger employers in Salem. Have you gotten response from that, or are they thinking about trying to do something?
Those conversations tend to be long-term conversations. We build those relationships, for example, with Amazon, with Salem Health. And we just continue to nurture them, and what happens is when they have a change, for example, let's say they're going to close a parking structure, or we know that there's going to be construction, those are the times where they realize that it's an opportunity to go out and work with their employees. So we look for those opportunities, but we just continue to build those relationships. And I'll certainly let you know when we have something to report with those.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm, thank you.
Director Kelly?
One of the things you talked about was the little blinky lights for bike safety. But I would really, in fact, I was planning on saying something about this in my remarks. I would really encourage people walking to use them too, because it's, if you're not in a well-lit area, if you're wearing medium to dark clothes, then people can't see you, but they can see a blinky little light. So I would encourage the blinky lights not to be just bike blinkies, but ped blinkies too.
Oh, absolutely. As I said, we had the bike lights we passed out, but also the 700 blinky lights. Most of those go to pedestrians. And I would agree with you. We even have some that can kind of clip on with a magnet, and that way you just wear them, and they make you very visible.
Or I have one on my jacket right now, because I realized when I was out doing things in our street, we don't have a lot of lights. And I gave one to one of my neighbors down the way too, who was walking a dark dog with a dark leash, with a dark coat and a dark hat.
I would love to buy a bucket of them and have them on my front porch for Halloween to give to all the children.
That'd be great.
So, but just reminding people to look for something like that too. Not necessarily have to be free, but at least look for something like that.
It's a wonderful reminder, Director Kelly. Thank you.
Especially since we all wear dark clothes in the wintertime, and
Yes.
then you don't see as well when you're driving a motor vehicle as you do when you're a pedestrian, because your eyes are more adjusted to so you do need to be visible.
Absolutely.
And you probably save a lot of lives or injuries by passing those out.
Well, and if anyone's interested, you can always contact our program. We are always happy to give out blinky lights, and there's a whole bucket of them upstairs in reception at Cherriots. So.
Other questions? Well, we always enjoy your report, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And our next report is the finance report.
And I'll ask McCoy, our CFO, to present the report.
Good evening, President Krebs and members of the board. I don't have any blinky lights to give you. And I'm sorry that I'm at the end of the information because we're just going to talk about numbers. But what I'm here for tonight is to present the first quarter financial statements for fiscal year 2018 and 19. And these will include statements from our three funds: the general fund, the special transportation fund, or the general transportation program fund, and also the capital project fund. So looking in your packet, we start on page 99, and that's where the tables of numbers are that I'll be referring to. I also will be showing some graphs in the PowerPoint. You can follow either one that you like. So talking about the general fund, passenger fares are at 21% of total budget, which is just under the 25% or quarter of the year level that we would anticipate to have received at this point. With regard to property taxes, you can see that we've only received 3% in the first quarter. This is also expected. We normally get the vast majority in November, and we have received a good sum of property taxes as people pay to get the discount at the first due date. On a positive note, our advertising revenue is performing above budgeted level at 42% of the annual budget. And also, we're glad to report that our interest on investments is performing as we had budgeted in the FY19 budget. Looking at the total expenditures in the general fund, and this was also, you can refer to page 100 if you want to look at the numbers. The general fund is slightly over budget in total at about 27% of the total annual budget. Within that, the operations division is at 27% of the annual budget. That discrepancy is primarily driven by the fact that we got 4 months of premiums charged into the first quarter, with the October premium being paid on the very last day of September. So because of the large staff personnel in that division, it put them over just a little bit. Also, the other division that is burning a little bit faster than what we would expect is the unallocated general administration division, and it's expended about 34% of its total budget. However, when we looked at the transactions that made up this quarter's activity, we found that there was really not need for alarm, because most of the transactions were a lot of one-time annual cost for memberships, dues. We paid the annual liability insurance in the first quarter of the year. With regard to the general fund, the other divisions, I'll just show briefly. The general manager board of directors division is at 24% of budget. The admin division is at 23%. Finance is at 24%. Marketing and communications at 24%. Then on page 102 of your packet, we talk about the Transportation Programs Fund. Most of the programs in this fund are in line with what we would expect 1/4 of the way through the fiscal year. However, there are two operations programs, Cherriots Lift and Cherriots Shop and Ride, that are running slightly ahead of budget at 28% and 33% respectively. Cherry Lift Operations is over budget due to an increased allocation of cost from the call center, which was not budgeted high enough. There was a different allocation done this year because if you remember, Nimitz went away in, I believe it was February. And so a lot of the cost for the call center was allocated there. We had to reallocate everything to the call center back out to the other departments and programs that they support. So I believe our budget was a little bit off on that. We will continue to watch that closely. Cherriots Shop and Ride operations is over budget due to contracted transportation costs have exceeded the budget each month of the first quarter. This is something else we'll need to watch closely. On page 101 of your packet, you'll see the schedule for the capital project fund. Our expenditures on that for the quarter are about 22% of the budget. And though we're under budget, if we were to divide it into a quarter, we're under the 25% threshold. But this is much improved. If you might remember, those of you who remember the first quarter last year, we were at 4%. So we are really working on getting our capital projects done this year and staying on top of the schedules on those projects. However, the revenues in the capital fund you'll see are minimal because they always lag the completion of the project. They're on a reimbursement level. So we'll see those in the later quarters of the year. And that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain.
Do we have any questions? Director Bush?
Are we seeing any numbers for Hospital 2017 money yet, or is it
I'm
too
sorry,
early?
for what money?
For the Hospital 2017 monies, the special statewide transportation improvement fund.
What was your question? Have we received any? No, we won't receive them until hopefully in April.
Oh, the
Okay.
stiff?
The stiff,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, yes.
I'm sorry.
No, we won't get those until later in the fiscal year.
So April.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Other questions?
Other question? Well, it looks like we're pretty much on budget, so.
We're doing well, yes. Yes, we are.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the good job you're doing. Our last information item is the South Salem Transit Center.
Yes, and I'll present this report. It's a verbal only, there's nothing in your packet. So as you're aware, the South Salem Transit Center is a project we've been working on for several years. We had received a Connect Oregon grant for land acquisition and beginning the design process. And that we've been working with Walmart over the last period of time trying to come to an agreement. There's time and requirement restrictions on the Connect Oregon grant through the ODOT agreement that we have. One of them, let me back up a little bit, give a little bit more background so everyone's understanding. So the South Salem Transit Center is part of our regional plan for our service, which is central. Central piece of that is the transit centers deployed throughout the area in order to connect our high-frequency corridor service to our neighborhood connectors that bring people to the transit centers to ride the big bus. The South Salem Transit Center site selection process, which began back in 2013, we identified, based on an existing and future conditions report, a list of sites. We narrowed those sites down to 8, and then in December of 2014, this board selected the Walmart site as its preferred option for a transit center in South Salem. While we did receive the Connect Oregon grant, that was not nearly enough money to fund the entire project, but it was to help us get started to round out the real actual construction. We have sought out additional grants, specifically through federal fund process. And in preparing for this, we realized we have requested federal grants for the South Salem Transit Center every year since 2012. and have been unsuccessful. While we have been successful in receiving federal grants for bus replacement for this facility, we have not been. So with the original awarding of the grant, we had a 5-year timeline. So the grant, while the grant was to award, the award was for land acquisition and beginning of design work. It wasn't, in our application, we also talked about the construction, and all of that had to be done within 5 years, which the 5-year period culminates January of 2020. So as a result of the delays and not being able to meet, get an agreement with Walmart, we would be unable to, even if we bought the property today, we would be unable to complete the construction because of the design timeline, permitting timeline, and construction timeline by January of 2020, which is 13 months from now. So rather than even continuing through the land acquisition process, spending the money, and then not being able to meet the entire project, and then having to reimburse it, we've informed ODOT that our intent's to terminate the Connect Oregon 5 grant. So we did not receive any money, did not spend any money, and so we wanted to make sure we didn't put ourselves in any more jeopardy. So with the actual construction timeline requirement, that was one issue. The one we've been working on, you're aware of, is trying to come to an agreement with Walmart, even though you did authorize us to go through the eminent domain process. As we looked at the timeline, even if we, as I said earlier, exercised it, we wouldn't be able to complete the other requirements, which is the construction. So we will continue this process. Well, we're unable to use this grant. The South Salem Transit Center is still a much-needed project. And so the plan is we need to take a step back. Our plan is to re-engage with the board in a work session in February to discuss what are we going to do now. We'll be putting together some options for you to discuss on how we actually get this, and maybe have some serious discussions on how do we get funding, because that's the first piece of this, whether it's a federal grant or not. But for those listening, we're Cherriots remains committed to building that center. And what I have for you, and I'll hand out when I'm done speaking, is a set of talking points which kind of summarizes what I've said. So if you are talking to community members and the South Salem Transit Center comes up in the conversation, you'll have some information so that we're providing consistent response to that. Right now we're in the agreement rescind process. We're working with ODOT staff on that. We've been working on some of that actually today. The short version of all that is we've had to rescind the grant and acceptance of the grant for inability to meet all the criteria from the actual use of the money, but also the completion of the project. I'll take any questions.
Yes, Director Kelly.
Was there any discussion of maybe moving the money to the Keizer Transit Center signalized?
Yes, because the Connect Oregon process, it can only be for the actual project that it was for. And actually, we have existing Keizer Transit Center grant for the signalized that we actually tried to move to South Salem, and the federal government wouldn't allow us to move it there. That's why we didn't have additional money for construction. Or one of the reasons, I shouldn't say the only reason.
An additional question, if, transit was a pretty small bit of the Connect Oregon pot, didn't ever seem to get that, but if there is money turned back, can it go to some other transit project that did apply for Connect Oregon?
I I'm not sure, but I think the real issue is because of the requirements of the bonding, that money would have to be expended by January 2020, no matter where it goes to.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is if there was some other transit entity that got some of that Connect Oregon money but has not finalized.
Yeah, I think that's really up to the Connect Oregon Oversight Committee. My hunch is they're going to use that to repay the bond proceeds. But that would be up to the Oversight Committee.
They actually have done some different things in the past.
Yeah.
In moving around the money. And then the next thing that we need to be sure that we remember about is under the new transportation House Bill 2017, in the Connect Oregon section, it eliminated transit as part of the Connect Oregon, although the emphasis on the transit funding that was provided was to have that as operations. And so I don't know whether the Transit Association wants to try to lobby back to get Connect Oregon money, transit back in as part of Connect Oregon money, because otherwise there's actually not going to be a state resource for capital improvement very much for transit.
Yeah, actually, in the House Bill 2017, there's 5% available for transit capital projects statewide, which is a process we're going through now. So the House Bill 2017 was 90% formula for operations, 5% for I forget what they call it, but basically for transit capital, 4% for inner city networking.
Yeah, and 1% for the rural areas help, because they don't always have enough staffing. It is just a thought, because in my remarks I will make some comments about what I heard yesterday at the state legislature.
Sure.
So.
I think that's certainly a potential for future bienniums. I know this legislative session, the OTA's legislative agenda for the House Bill 2017 is just to kind of report on progress, because the applications are in now, and then really to ensure the maintaining of the STF funds that came from the general fund for senior and disabled transportation, that doesn't go away because of House Bill 2017.
Other questions? Well, then we'll call our general manager for his report.
Okay. Yes, so I'll pass those out after my report. So I have a couple items to report. First, earlier this week, the Salem City Council approved the Salem City Council Transit Committee's recommendations. The actual motion was to accept the recommendations and direct city staff to create an action plan to implement the recommendations. I previously sent that out to you. At the council meeting, Director Bush was there. One member of the committee, Cy Smith, did testify and made some good comments, talked about the importance of prioritizing the transit supportive elements as part of the comp plan redo. A recommendation one of the recommendations is to redo the MOU and the IGA we have with the city, and he recommended really emphasizing some economic development components as part of that agreement. And if a circulator bus in the downtown area happens to make it visually distinct and separate from our service to make it really stand out. Councilors McCoy and Hoy, who were two of the three council members of the committee, did also make comment and thanked the committee members for their active work over the year-long process. I guess we had 10 meetings. It didn't seem that many, but so we had 10 meetings, and they both thanked the committee for the work that they did. And so you have those recommendations that I sent in my last weekly report. So our staff will be following up with city staff to find out when that timeline happens and begin our pieces to help that. Also, so I will send out in my weekly report tomorrow. So APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, issued a news release today. They had commissioned a study called The Transformation of the American Commuter, and talking about, they conducted a survey, and did focus groups and did a nationwide survey with a focus on millennials, and the result that nearly 80% of commuters see public transit as the backbone of a lifestyle that really includes ride-hailing, automated vehicles, emergent technologies. Really the whole piece that we've talked about in the strategic plan, where you approve, when we looked at the future, about transit agencies being mobility integrators, and it's not just the bus anymore, it's how do buses and rideshare and mobility on demand opportunities, how do they all work together? And I think the important quote was there, and you'll see it in the press release. It's essential that we transit agencies transform our thinking on how we provide local transportation services to ensure integration across markets, modes, and providers, and to simplify the user's access and work to keep trip and service costs equitable for customers. Most importantly, it's critical we grow the new mobility network to safeguard our industry's mission to serve people from all walks of life while enhancing a region's transportation and community goals. And so there's about a 30-page study, and I will include that in my weekly report so you can read that tomorrow. It's really kind of the blueprint of what the transit industry's been talking about as they look to the future, what will transit and mobility look like in communities in the future, with all, especially with the emerging technology and everything going to app-based applications. So I've only looked at it quickly because it came out this afternoon, but I wanted to share that. And then the only other item I have is I'd like to thank Director Bush and Director Rogers for participating in the parade on the weekend. It was a nice evening for all. And with that, happy holidays to everyone. That concludes my report.
Well, I guess it's my turn. I'm wearing my Cherriot shirt, and this will probably be one of the last times I wear it for official function, because we're changing logos, and this is the last meeting of the year, and we sort of started the year with the Cherry logo, and we're finishing the year with the other logo, so I have both logos on today. And this, as we change, you'll see our new buses are blue and white, blue, white, and gray, and I see them running around on the streets now, and several of my neighborhood groups have mentioned seeing them, so we're all pleased that they're out there serving the public. During the last month, we had a longer period between meetings because our last meeting was in October. I attended several meetings dealing with proposed transportation improvements, and in fact, there was a Statesman Journal editorial concerning transportation improvements here in the Salem area, and there's a very brief comment in there about maybe we should figure out ways to help people learn how to use public transit. And also, I received a copy of the City of Salem's Congestion Relief Study, and that study estimates, looks at expanding capacity on our two river bridges from 9,000 to 10,500 vehicles per hour, and the cost of that is about $200 million, estimated cost. I shared with you some PowerPoint presentation from the Toronto Transit Commission, and in that it had some great slides that show capacity, the one where it shows how much streetscape it takes to put 40 people in cars, and then it shows how much streetscape for 40 people in a vehicle. And looking at an interim project to increase capacity across the river, it would probably cost less than $200 million to build a high-capacity rail transit corridor rather than doing things to the bridge, and this would be a separate corridor to the street lanes. I support investment in rail transit because I feel it would stimulate the local economy, it would encourage transit-oriented development, and it would keep more dollars in our community. Other meetings that I attended, it seems like they were leaning towards rail things, but I attended a meeting with the Port of Willamette people, and they are trying to develop a freight facility at Brooks that would transfer truck containers to rail cars and then ship them up to the ports of Tacoma and Seattle. Part of this, or a side benefit from this particular thing, would be the possibility of extending West Commuter Rail down to Salem, and this would give us a rail corridor where trains could operate at 79 miles an hour in the rural areas to provide commuter service between the Portland metro area and downtown Salem. So this is one of the things. And then the other meeting I attended held here in Salem was the ODOT Passenger Rail Environmental Impact Study open house, and this is dealing with the Eugene, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, Canada route. And this is another area where we could invest and buy capacity fairly inexpensively compared to adding additional lanes to I-5. Both of these projects would provide capacity, and I just like to comment that other modes are often overlooked because the Highway Trust Fund planners focus only on building roads, and this is somewhat having a negative impact because we don't have enough road dollars to build the roads that we need. We need good roads, but we need to look at, in the congested areas, maybe using transit as a solution. Many people are talking about transit options, but many of them are just talking about them. So I'm just saying that I hope that as we go into the new year, Salem Keizer Transit is going to be introducing more new buses, and we're also, in about a little less than 9 months, we're hopefully going to be introducing Saturday and late evening service. And I hope that maybe there'll be some other statewide transit improvements that will benefit our community as well. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish the board and the staff and our listening audience a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Hanukkah, or whatever holidays enjoy them with your family. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody to provide better transit service here in the coming year. So with that, I will thank everybody for working on the board this year and call on Director Bush for her report.
Okay. How do you pack, is it 6 weeks or more into a couple of minutes? I attended the regular board meeting in October and the work session in November, and we had an executive session in October as well. I attended the Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee that Director Thompson is the liaison for, so would I kind of briefly go over the minutes on his behalf. They talked about an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Staten for a new bus shelter, and got that worked out. They're looking at beginning construction possibly through our STF grant funds in the summer of 2019. Welcomed new members Beth Jackson and Bryant Baird. They were appointed by us in September. And they recommended the bylaw revisions, which we passed this evening. And we received a presentation of the STF 5310 grant solicitation process, and how that all works out. That was an interesting presentation. And we have an estimated allocation to Cherriots for 2019-2021 biennium of about $2 million for the 5310 formula, and for the STF program of $1,900,000. So that'll be put to good use in our community. And then they received an overview of the service change, which was presented tonight to us as well. So I think that's just about everything for that one. I attended several greeters meetings with the Salem Chamber and the Keizer Chamber, and a couple of them up in Woodburn, just to get our face in that area as well in a different arena. It's been very informative, and I attended the Latino Business Alliance, a couple meetings there. Keizer City Council meetings are always very entertaining, and they're welcoming 2 new councilors. Elizabeth Smith and Daniel Kohler will be sworn in January, and as well Mayor Clark is starting another term. So I sat in on the Salem Public Transit Committee meetings, and it was an honor to just be there like the fly on the windowsill, so to see how the conversation wound around and came to some really good decisions and good recommendations. I think our community will benefit greatly from those decisions. Let's see. I went to the Marion County Commissioner breakfast with the Keizer City councilors to be a voice there, and mostly listening to how they all work together. I attended Commissioner Carlson's retirement party and the breakfast for the Reentry Initiative breakfast. So, and one of our community members of Keizer, former director, Keizer Fire Director Mike Hart, passed away, and he'll be a loss to the community, and his wife is serving on that board now, and attended his memorial service. So, and with that, I think I'm done.
Thank you. Director Kelly?
The Area Commission on Transportation didn't meet in December. It met in November, but Director Lincoln attended for me because I was out of town on an annual church convention. I went to the Salem Today public open house that was held on December 5th, which was the same day as the train thing. So our household split. I went to the city thing and Victor went to the train thing. Attended quite a few, I think 3 City Club meetings in this period of time, and have had some contact with constituents. Something that I don't attend because I'm a transit board member, but I attend because of my advocacy adventures over at the state capitol. I was in the House Revenue yesterday in the morning, and they had a report on how the Special Transportation Investment Fund statewide transit tax revenue is coming in, and unfortunately there's only about an 80% compliance of employers sending the money in. There could be varied reasons for this, but it also has meant that the forecast for revenues for the 2017-19 period has dropped from $116 million to $84 million. So it's a pretty substantial drop. So if you are an employer, this is something that you need to send in. It comes out of your employees' wages at 0.1%. But that was not good news. So I think that the forecast was probably based on people complying a bit better than what they did or what they have done. The Department of Revenue talked about the fact that they will be contacting employers who have not remitted anything for starting at the beginning of the year, and the implementation of it. And hopefully at some point the Employment Division would be able to have this on their regular filing form or their last time I did one of these, it was on you had a disc and then you just added in the things that you paid your employees and all of the different taxes, and then you just downloaded a piece of paper and sent it in. Hopefully that will improve the employer compliance on this. But it means that we probably need to think about prioritizing what we do with the new money, because we probably won't get nearly as much as we thought we might to begin with, which is the other concern that I have about the capital project improvement. And once again saying, okay, you've got this over here and we'll do a little bit of money for you to do capital projects. But, you know, we have $3 billion for roads. So I guess besides that, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. I don't think there's...
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yeah.
Director Lincoln?
Since it was such a long period, I attended 2 SCATS meetings and the OMPOC meeting and the Area Commissions meeting. In addition to a City Club meeting, which is a fascinating story about December 7th in Salem, Pearl Harbor Day in Salem, and photos, and it was a really good program. Also went to the Festival of Lights parade, and all 8 people in our group agreed that the Cherriots bus was absolutely far and above the best part of the parade, so good job. The OMPOC meeting, I'll give a little summary. That was in Bend on the 26th of October, and it was interesting. There's still some confusion among all of the various transit districts about use of the STIF funds and what qualifies and how much you can count on them. So we had to rehash that a little, and Jerry Bohard from ODOT was there and tried to help a little bit. She also pointed out that ODOT wants to keep some focus on intercity connections, cross-transportation needs, and partnerships between different jurisdictions as far as providing transportation between jurisdictions. Equity is a real big issue for ODOT. They want service enhancements to be equitably distributed throughout the area that you're serving, so that's important. She acknowledged that the area commissions are not feeling the love. I'll talk about that too. That was a topic at that ACT meeting. She says maybe they could be more, they want to be more involved and have more input to the OTC. She suggested maybe inviting legislators to the meetings, so you've got someone in the Capitol who's knows what your priorities are. Blaine Transit District is doing a big project, Transit Tomorrow. They're trying to adapt to emerging technology. They're working with Jarrett Walker, moving towards, I thought this was more towards 60% frequency and 40% coverage. I don't know how that compares with us, but.
We're 75-25.
75 frequency and 25 coverage. Interesting. I also read recently that Salem is one of the denser cities in the state. Next to Portland, we have the densest population. So it should be easier maybe for us to serve more of our population. Lane, in spite of the universities, Corvallis and Eugene are both more spread out, not as dense as Salem is. Anyway, sidetrack. OMPOC came up with some legislative priorities for next year. Their number 1 is to connect Oregon funding, which isn't going to help transit. Lower the local match for the Salem Routes to School program. Right now it's 20% unless you got a Title IX school, and then it's 10%. So they want all the local match to be 10% because it's really hard for smaller communities to come up with that local match. They want ODOT to rethink their control over local speed limits. Currently, ODOT controls speed limits, and it's a real process to get it lowered. There's a lot of places where you've got, like Lock Haven and Keizer, which is, I think, 30 miles an hour, and you got kids on bicycles and trying to walk to school and get across that looks like an expressway. I think this is a great idea. Try to give more control to local jurisdictions over speed limits. So that was the OMPOC meeting. The Area Commission's meeting, Area Commission on Transportation, was the 1st of November. There was a discussion about the roles of the commissions and how they can be more effective. Also discussion of the intermodal facility proposal for Brooks, which President Krebs mentioned, and those proposals went to the OTC, and they were supposed to review them all, I think there's 3 proposals altogether, in January or February, and I read some of the proposal from the Brooks folks, and Director Krebs is quoted in it with his support. So that was, and then there's no meeting until, January meeting's canceled too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not till
Yes.
February.
So there won't be a meeting until February, not the
Right.
I hope I didn't say the February meeting was canceled.
No. There was a SCATS, Salem Keizer Area Transportation Study special meeting on the 13th of November when the committee met to vote on sending a letter to the Salem City Council requesting that they move ahead on the Luber remand, which concerned the third bridge across the river. I voted against the motion based upon our last motion that our board voted, and also consistent with most of the people in my sub-district who would be greatly affected by another bridge. A lot of other folks in the city who don't have a voice on that committee otherwise. But motion passed by majority vote, and they did send that letter on to the city council. City council, I think, since then has decided to have a work session on it in January to get more information. And then on the 27th was the regular SCATS meeting, and the staff introduced a system to, the SCATS has a regional transportation system plan with all the transportation projects that the folks on that sit on that committee want to have prioritized, but there's certainly not enough funds for everything, so you have to decide what comes to the top of the list. So the staff has introduced a new system to help us prioritize those projects based upon both the goals that the SCATS committee has adopted, which are going to be, there's like safety, congestion relief, maintenance. So we have a series of 9 goals. Plus, now there are new federal performance standards that have to be met, and the federal government wants to make sure that any projects that we pick meet some of those performance standards. So it's, you got 2 different standards and a whole list of projects and this amount of money and this amount of projects, and how do you decide which ones get funded and how they meet the goals that you've adopted. So that's what we're working on now, and then our next meeting too, and who knows how this will turn out, but it'll be very interesting. The Cherriots transit asset management targets, which we adopted several months ago, I think, are part of this process. That's part of the federal government's requirement to make sure that we have performance standards and that our assets are performing according to, consistent with the funding that they supplied for them. So I think that's all that I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Rogers?
Well, I get to close this out. Okay, well, we didn't have our board meeting in November, so I thought, I'll branch out and try something that's a little out of my comfort zone. And I chose to go to one of the greeters meetings for the Salem Chamber of Commerce. And I had about a minute to say something, so I reminded all the business owners there that we connect people with places very well. I had to hit that one out there, have that ringing in their ear. I was also invited to go to the public library and sit in with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. And, I don't agree with everything they say, but when you're talking about gun safety for children, and especially in the home, you've got my ear in there. And, I always support that. And I had quite a few I wrote it down and now I can't find it, can't remember what it was. Neighborhood associations. Had quite a few of those I went to, and everyone is really excited for Saturday service, extended service. They're chomping at the bit and can't wait to hear back exactly when it's going to happen.
268 days.
I'll write that down.
September 7th.
Ask Mr. Custer.
September 7. That's a good date. And essentially that was it, except I loaded up all the grandkids with lots of candy on the bus and then sent them back to their parents. And that was fun. And so I think all the holidays have been covered, but we forgot to say, be safe. A lot of people out there get a little excited at celebrating whichever holiday they want to celebrate and maybe have a little bit too much to drink. You know, or maybe they're driving long distances, don't get the sleep they need, and that's just as bad as drinking a little too much. You're not fresh at the wheel, so watch out for other vehicles. And there
Thank
you go.
you. Is there anything else for?
I have one last one.
Yes, Director Bush.
I attended the Salem Keizer Active Transportation Network meeting on November 29 here in this room. And one thing that of note, they talked about safer crossings in the area and which ones need to be improved, and our statewide transportation fund updates. But they're talking about bike share updates, that there's going to be some kiosks coming where you can check out a bike via using an app on your phone, write it wherever you need to do in the area, and then maybe return it at another kiosk. So I thought that was rather interesting to share. So besides that, have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, this is the last meeting for this calendar year, and our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 24th, and be held here. And that'll be our first 2019 meeting. And with that, we'll adjourn.
Now I can ring my bell.